All right. Hello.
Hi, Carrie. How
How
are
are
you?
you, Famina? Oh my goodness. I'm so glad we're doing this. It has been a long time coming.
Yes, it sure has. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on. I am so excited to be chatting with you today.
Yay. So Famina is she has a channel called the Fun Fab Life. And she is my first guest on my channel, which I'm so happy about. It kind of funny story about how we met, right? We were both on a mastermind business course together. We were both moms. Remind me if I'm missing anything. And so we were, doing the business thing, we were doing the mom thing, and then we kept in touch off and on. And then I feel like maybe 3 years ago, so that was 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
hmm
my gosh.
I can't believe how fast the time has flown, and I can't believe we've known each other for that long.
Yes. And the crazy thing is most of the time we have been doing like remote Zoom chats because you're in North Carolina
Yeah.
and I'm in Texas. So for what was it? Was it 3 years? We were just chatting online, hadn't seen each other in person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was coming to visit you and you came to visit me. But that was like what, 3 years in, 4 years in, I feel
Yeah, it
like.
was about 4 years in because I
Yeah.
feel like it was 2022 when we actually met in person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And funny enough, it's so funny because when Carrie has family that lives in North Carolina and I have family that lives in Texas, so we actually do just travel like Carrie travels to North Carolina and I travel to Texas. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. How crazy is that? Of all places,
Yeah,
both
exactly.
have family. That's so
Yeah.
fun.
And it's actually close, like it's within like 30 minutes to an hour. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not like you're just coming to North Carolina, driving a huge distance to see your family, and same for me because our families live pretty close to where we are. So that is quite interesting.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think what else. I think the other thing that's interesting about us is, first we connected about business,
hmm
right? Because of the mastermind.
Yeah.
And I feel like, a year, like after the mastermind was over, we kind of kept in touch a little bit here and there.
hmm
But then I feel like it was 2 to 3 years ago where we just decided, hey, do you want to have like monthly girl chats?
Right. Yeah.
And like, hey, this thing's going on and just bouncing ideas off of each other. And
Yeah.
so then chatting monthly and
hmm
then finally getting to see each other in person. So that was so fun. Oh my gosh.
And I think we connected more on the mom identity, the mom piece of it. And
Yes.
yes, because we were trying to kind of figure out where we were between career and motherhood.
Yes.
Right. We were really struggling with that at that time.
Yes, absolutely. Because my son, I think, was, gosh, maybe like, so 2000, so he was about two when
hmm
I did the mastermind with you. And then you have three girls, right?
Yeah, yeah. And what's that, 5 years ago? So
I know.
these are like, and
Doing
I
the
can't even
math.
remember. I'm like, I'm trying to do the math. They
Yeah.
were probably in elementary school at that point. Yeah, yeah, they were. So it was a struggle because I have three girls and they're pretty close in age. They're like 2 years apart. And I was trying to figure out my identity up
Mm.
from being a mom and being, a career woman, and then trying to balance everything together with um, my relationship with my husband and the kids and myself. And then I kind of lost myself. I think a lot of moms do, right?
Yeah, I can totally relate with that because
Mhm.
how mine worked was when I had my son. So I'm also a stepmom, and so I have two stepsons. They're older, but then when I had my son, I thought I was totally, going to be that mom that stayed home for maybe a month or two, and I was going to be ready to go back to work. So
Mhm.
I wasn't even thinking about this identity of motherhood at all because I just hadn't like really connected with it. And I didn't think I was going to be stay at home. And so it's crazy because when my son came, I ended up changing my mind and wanting to stay home. And then that caused an identity crisis, both
Yep.
with myself and with my husband, because we talked about it. I was going back to work, right? Because
Mhm.
that's what I thought I wanted. And then when I changed my mind, it's like I hadn't prepared, I hadn't thought about it. And so I got totally thrown off as well, but in a different way because you went back to work, right?
Yes, I did. So at the time I had my first baby, my husband and I were actually living in different cities, and we would like travel to see each other on the weekends. But once, we had the baby, I was having to move, not having to move. We wanted to live together, right? So we had
Right.
the baby,
Yeah.
and I moved away from where I was actually going into work, and I thought I was gonna just quit, but I had an option to work remotely. Um,
Uh-huh.
that was like 15 years ago, way before the pandemic. And so I took my job and my baby and moved in with my husband, but that caused um, a little bit of identity crisis because
Yeah.
I was not used to working at home, so that was a new thing. I had a new
Hmm.
baby, that was a new thing, and I didn't have a support system.
Yeah, bingo.
That was
I did not have that as well. And you and
right.
I've had long conversations about this. We're going to be talking about this more because I feel like it's so important, especially being a modern day woman and a modern day mom.
Mhm.
That support system and that loss of the group that we've talked about, like hit the nail on the head. It's yeah,
Yeah.
the support.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was really crucial. And I didn't really understand how crucial it was because, when I had my first baby, it was like I was so focused on, the sleep schedule and feeding the baby, changing the baby, entertaining the baby.
yeah,
I forgot about me.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I
Yep.
feel like that happens to so many of us. So I'm
And
excited that we're going to
yep,
be talking about more about this.
exactly, exactly. And I had no idea about intentional parenting or changes to the relationship. It just happens and I was not prepared for it. And I'm sure a lot of moms are not prepared for that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
totally. Awesome. All right. Well, this is exciting. All right. So story, we talked about the story about how we met.
Mhm.
And now just kind of want to hear your story. Like, who is Famina?
Mhm.
How did you grow up? Did you go to university? Kind of leading up into motherhood and where you are now.
Yeah.
So,
My parents are immigrant parents are from India, and I was born here in the United States. And when they initially came, we lived in New York, and like all immigrant parents, we had a lot of family come, but we were constantly moving around. So we moved from New York to, well, from apartment to a house to different cities, and then eventually made our way to North Carolina. Um, by the time we got to North Carolina, we were like middle school, high school. So um, we moved back and forth between New York and North Carolina until we finally got settled. And that was
yeah.
only because, my dad had gotten a job there, but my mom hadn't. And they had a house in New York and it wasn't selling. So then we would move back and forth. When we finally settled in North Carolina, we were high school age, and I say we because me and my siblings, but I was high school age. And then we moved into college. So I went to college, and then after university, so I had a degree. I graduated with a degree in computer information systems and an MBA. So
Okay. Wow.
so
Yeah.
it was a consolidated program, so I graduated really fast. And I got my first job out of college working in tech,
Okay.
as a computer programmer and for a financial company. So
Mhm.
um, that's how I got my start. I landed a job in North Carolina in a different city. But this was the first time I was, living in my own apartment on my own, got my car, got the freedom. I was
Woohoo!
so
Yes. I
excited.
remember that time too.
Yeah.
So
It was
good.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out who I was. And then, as I grew in my role, we had a couple of mergers and this and that was happening on the work front. And I was moving cities within North Carolina. So I've lived almost in every major city in North Carolina.
Wow.
And I, was just kind of exploring who I was for about 4 or 5 years. And then I decided that I wanted to get married and my husband and
Yes.
he
He's so
he
sweet. I've met him. I love him. He's so great.
Yep. So that's another story on how we met, but
Yeah.
he's from Canada, so he ended up moving to North Carolina with me. And at that time I was living in Charlotte and he was trying to get a job in Charlotte, but he couldn't find one. So he found a job in Raleigh. So that's like about 2.5 hours um,
Yeah.
apart. So even
Okay.
though we started as a long distance relationship, and even after we got married, it was still long distance.
Hmm.
And we did that for probably about 2 years. But most of
Okay.
the time we would just, we would travel between our houses because he also got a house in Raleigh and I had a house in Charlotte. And I would do remote work. So I
Okay.
would go to work remotely. So I would, spend a week or two there and then come back and then he would come on weekends. So we were doing that for a couple of years. And then we got pregnant with our first baby.
Yay.
And so after we had the baby, I made the decision to move to Raleigh, so we could be like a family.
Yeah.
And
Because
I
that's
also,
a long time
yeah, that
to
is a long time.
do long distance.
It
I
is.
so yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to do another video about that.
Yes.
Tips
Definitely.
tips for doing long
Yes.
distance.
Um, so so it was at that point I moved to Raleigh and I had a new baby and I was working remotely and had no friends.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you're because I feel like as women, when we're in our career,
Mhm.
most of our relationships are work relationships.
Yeah.
And you don't like I didn't really have a lot of time outside of the working relationships to really hone in and develop like female friendships, girlfriend friendships specific outside of work, like maybe I did in college, right?
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
had more time. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I ran into that too.
Yep. And
And
then, yeah,
yeah,
and then because I was working during the day, there was no like groups to join for working moms, at other times,
yeah,
like in the evening or on the weekends. And even then, on the weekends, I was spending time with my family, right? So it's not like I'm going to go off to a mommy group at that time.
yeah, yeah,
So and then because my kids are like so close in age, it was like I was trying to climb out of this, discover myself. And when I did, it was like I had the next baby.
yeah,
You know? And I had no really, intention, like, I wasn't intentional about I didn't know what intentional parenting was, to tell you
yeah.
the truth. I just thought, you have the baby, you take care of the baby, and you create a family, but I had no idea how like, what went into that. I was just going off to what my family was like and kind of what I've seen in society.
Mm-hmm.
But, as you know,
Yes. As we've had
that doesn't
many
work out.
conversations about.
Yeah, I didn't understand that there were skills and things that I needed to acquire
Yes.
to create the kind of the family and the life that I wanted. And this went on for a while, and then I started my YouTube journey, kind of just trying to share what I was going through and what I was doing, and kind of like it was kinda a hodgepodge of things in the beginning, to tell you the truth. It was like
Yeah.
cooking videos and what I was doing with my kids and how to manage kids and a couple of blogs and that kind of stuff. But a few years ago, I really, wanted to kinda take this intentionality of my life, and I started focusing on gratitude and creating like your dream life. So that's
Right.
like really
Yes.
my channel is focused on, and being a rule follower, I want it to be fun because it was
Mhm.
I was kind of hearing a lot of messaging about adulting and how everything was hard and they, didn't want to do it. And I'm like, like I'm an adult. I can control most of what's going on in my life and I want it to be fun and I want it to be balanced.
Yes.
I want to enjoy my life. So that's kind of where my channel is, and I'm trying to, I'm sharing what I have found out because over the last, I mean, really since 2020, last 4 years, just
Yeah.
putting these things into practice, like there's so much fun and abundance in my life now. And we've had a
Yay.
lot of conversations on this, right?
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's where I am now.
Exciting.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. And I feel like I've had conversations with you and other women. It's like you feel like, okay, you're told to go get an education and all these things, which are good, career, but then you get the education, you get the career, you get the relationship, then you get the if you want to create a family, you get the family,
Mhm.
but then all of a sudden something's not working. Like it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I did all the things I
Mhm.
heard I was supposed to do,
Right.
but why do I feel like something's missing? Like why do I feel
Mhm.
why do I the other thing is like I have all this, but I'm so tired, it's difficult for me to enjoy it. I feel like that's a trap that a lot of us fall into and like where we can get stuck,
Mhm.
where we're doing all the things, but we're doing it in a way where we're absolutely exhausted. And now that we got all the things, we're too tired to enjoy it.
Yep. Which is exactly why I started my gratitude journey because that's what I was feeling too. And another piece of it is we're missing who we are, right?
Yes,
We've
I
lost
totally
our
agree.
identity of who we are. Like we have identity of motherhood, of the career woman, of the family person. But having that identity, we sometimes don't prioritize ourselves and put everything else above what we need to fill ourselves up, right? So that's what I found in me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're going to be talking a lot more about this because I'm hearing these conversations with other women that are in my circles, and these are the things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so, yes, work hard. Yes, do all the things, but also find ways to do it in a way where you can enjoy it. Because I
Yeah.
feel like it's that enjoyment piece,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
that's been missing.
Yeah.
So okay, awesome. Well, let's see what's my next question. So, yes. So tell me a little bit more. You mentioned gratitude,
Mhm.
and what are you focused on these days? Like what lights you up? What do you get excited about lately? Like what's going on in your life, conversations you're having,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
So I'm getting back into connecting with all my girlfriends. We're all
Yes.
moms, we all have
Yes.
families, and we're having these like deeper conversations about our perspective and experiences, which I feel was not a conversation that I was having in my 20s or 30s. And so that is like one of the big overarching themes because I feel like we can gain a lot of wisdom
Mm-hmm.
and seeing what other women are going through that are in the same place that we are, right? So that's like when and I want to create. So since I have 3 daughters, um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm focused on creating that close functional family. Um, because I'm hearing again a lot of messaging on um, having teenagers and, "Oh, no, you have teenagers." But I don't buy into that messaging. I feel like this is a time to really create that close-knit family and a sense of belonging, um, and kind of work with them because this is when kids start forming their own beliefs and their own opinions and just being open, like having open communication and connection. Um,
Right.
that
Yeah.
relationship aspect.
Yeah, because
Is
I feel like teenagers,
Mhm.
it seems like the pattern is when they get into the teenage phase, that's when they seem to shut down. It seems
Yeah.
like. So
Yeah.
that, and they're listening more to their peers,
Mhm.
which is totally natural, but it's the shutting down part. So I
Mhm.
love that you're like exploring this and all that stuff because I went through some of this with my stepsons, and it's a different situation, and I'm going to be going through it again when my son gets into the teenager years. So it's just, we are all trying to do the best we can, I
Yeah.
feel like.
Yeah.
But you and I have talked about like there's got to be some better ways. Like,
Mhm.
and there's some things that are out of our control, but what is under our control that we can own
Mhm.
and model to try to create that intentional, as you call it, intentional family, intentional parenting,
Yeah.
intentional relationship versus just, throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks and hoping for the best, right?
Yeah. And
So,
so what I mean, the thing I've learned is you can only change yourself. So it's
mm,
my reactions and my um,
mm,
you know,
mm,
how I say things will, you know, ultimately influence them.
yes,
And I like to call it like the feminine leadership in the home because moms really do create the energy in the home. And
right.
I've not had a good model for that. And, I don't see a lot of modeling for that, just to be honest. Um,
I didn't see a lot either. I mean, we were 80s kids
yeah.
and, late 70s, 80s. And
Mhm.
I mean, my mom was, go, go, go.
Yeah. And my mom was a
So,
working mom, so, she wasn't home a lot.
yeah.
So, I think just that times have changed, like now that I'm working from home,
Hmm.
although I go into the office, I'm a hybrid mom now, so I work
Hmm.
remote and I go into the office. But
Love
I
it.
mean, it's a good time for that because my kids are teenagers and they have a lot of activities outside the home. But when they are in the home, I want to be that example because
Mm,
once you embody that, like it's more so, what the kids see than what you tell them. And that's like a mistake I
yeah.
made when the kids were little. And and you don't know it until you're in it that that's, not helping.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And I heard so many times growing up, do as I say, not as I do. Right.
right.
And I
Yeah,
think as children, it's like, well, if you're not even going to do it, like,
mhm,
why should I be listening to your advice in a way? Like,
yeah,
teenage years and things like that. Um, so
yeah,
yeah, I totally get that. And most of my girlfriends haven't had that, feminine, what do you call it, household like leadership in the home. I feel
mhm,
like the messages that I heard, and we're gonna have a whole nother conversation about this, a whole nother video, but this message of avoiding being a dependent helpless housewife,
mhm,
right? Like you don't want to be in that position. And
right,
so yes, we can take that, but then how do we still have the feminine piece
mhm,
in the household versus, running a tight ship, you know,
yeah.
go,
So
go,
yeah,
go.
so
So,
the conclusion or my opinion is that the messaging I get is as a wife, as a mother, we're supposed to be the ones cooking and cleaning and running the household. But when I think about it, that's something you can outsource to like a house manager or a home cleaner or whatever. So my job is to
mhm.
create the environment where there's like, that feeling of, oh, I'm home, that peace and that energy.
Yes.
Right? That's what we're supposed to create. And I had no idea. I
Yeah,
fell
because
into the
it
trap
doesn't
of
seem
the
like that's how it all worked out. Like,
no.
like
I
even if,
fell into Yeah, I fell into the trap of, like, I'm supposed to cook and clean and do all this, and then I would get annoyed and resented that nobody was helping me and nobody cared, and
Yeah.
They were doing their own things, and I'm like, "I'm here doing everything by myself," which I think is a lot of it's what I hear from a lot of other moms as well,
Yeah.
you know? Um, but I feel like if we shift our thinking, and
Mhm.
that's what I did, it's like your job is to create the environment where they feel, that they can relax
Mhm.
and communicate and say things even though they try to trigger you. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
These are very triggering,
Yes.
but I think that's where, the inner work and the growth happens is when you can say, like, "What is it about that that triggers me, and how can I react in a better way or respond in a better way?" And it
Right.
takes time, it takes practice because you never know what they're gonna say. You never know what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes you do it, and I've just learned to say, like I've learned to, like, name my emotions and just say, "I'm sorry, you know, I was triggered, or I got angry, or I got this or that," you know, emotion, because that
Right.
was not something that happened in my family,
Yes.
you know? We just had emotions, it wasn't, like, talked about. And it was usually the big blow up or, the yelling,
Yes.
you know? So things like that, so I'm working on that, and then, a couple of other things that are related to just me as a person, me as a woman,
Mhm.
because again, I think we kind of lose ourselves, and we lose ourselves in our family and in our jobs, that we don't spend that much time figuring out who we are and what we like.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, the emotional regulation piece, I feel like is a big one.
Mhm.
You think you needed it in your career, but it's on a whole nother level, with children.
Yeah.
And they really do test you and you see where you're at, you
Mhm.
know. Um, and I think we've also talked about this idea of healing generational wounds, like maybe some things that, we did get or we didn't get may have come from, the way our parents grew up and things like that. And just how can we, you know, have that inner work and that inner growth to heal that so then
Mhm.
we're not passing it along, the generational what is people call it? I feel like there's a term like healing
Um,
generational wounds or
yeah, I would just like to call it generational habits because that's really
yeah,
what it is, habits and behaviors.
I like
Um,
that.
yeah, so for me, it's more the yelling, right? That like focus on one thing at a time so you can kind of address that. And it starts with it starts with the parents, right?
Yeah,
So
and I feel like even because you've said and the emotional realm really is with the woman, I
mhm,
feel like.
mhm,
Or whoever's chosen to hold the female or feminine space in the household, right?
right.
Like somebody's got to kind of hold that space.
Mhm.
Because I
Yeah.
feel like if both partners are both trying to hold the space of being the lead on working and both trying to hold the space and the lead on the emotional, like it kind of gets watered down and no one's really excelling anywhere or really holding the space anywhere because they're trying to do too many things. But I don't know. We're still exploring it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's something that you have to create as like a family value or a family standard, and that's not something that was talked about. I mean, that was not something that was talked about intentionally in the house that I grew up in. It was just kind of like an underlying expectation um for like based on fear or based on not getting yelled at or based on the consequences, right? So, like,
Right.
for me, creating an intentional family means like, okay, so in this family, we're not going to yell, and how can we communicate better and kind of articulating that and also embodying that, right? So, like, if I get angry or am triggered, trying to, take a deep breath, step
Mhm.
away, come back to the conversation. or work on myself to kind of figure
Yeah.
out what it was and why I got so angry, right? So I've come a long way,
Yes, we
but
both have.
but still it's something that you continuously have to work on because as your kids get older, there's other things that they bring in,
Yeah.
um, that you need to address and handle. But when you do that, you do have a closer connection with your family and your kids.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that energy piece I feel like is so key, and I'm definitely going to be wanting to chat with you more about that topic.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So in my family, there wasn't growing up, there wasn't yelling,
Mhm.
but there was more being passive.
Mm. Yeah.
So, just quickly forgive and move on, not a lot of processing.
Mhm.
Um, and so because, people weren't really as assertive in my family, I think what me and my sister had to work on is learning how to talk through things, right? Learning how to have boundaries, learning how to have conversations about conflict.
Mhm.
Because I think it was just kind of like, well, let's just smooth it over, you know, let's get to the other side, let's move on,
Mhm.
which I think to a certain degree is great. Like that is a good skill because I think you could have the opposite where you're just
Yeah.
stuck on it and you never move on,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
ours was less, it was more do as you're told and follow what you need to do. And, let's not hurt anybody's feelings,
Mhm.
right? Let's not upset anybody.
Right.
So we had kind of the opposite challenge
Yeah.
of, yeah, learning how to have those boundaries and learning how to speak up and really use our voice, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
And especially in times where, like, if something wasn't okay, but someone's like, oh, it's okay, like being able to say, well, it's not okay for me right now, like it's not okay. And
Yeah.
let's have a conversation about it. So it's
Yeah.
interesting how, we have a lot of similarities, even the IT world, because my background, I worked in IT too, and motherhood, and then uh,
Yeah.
growing up kind of 70s, 80s kids, but then coming from the two different households and like how communication was handled, right?
Yeah.
And how conflict was handled and
Mhm.
things like that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun. Well, I'm so excited to have you on, and please let everyone know where can they find you if they want to learn more.
Yes. So you can find me at the Fun Fab Life. Just, you know, Carrie, you can leave it in the description box. You can leave my channel name.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
yeah, definitely find me there. I've been doing a lot of content on gratitude for the last 4 years or so. And now I'm focused on, creating your dream lifestyle, life vision and all of this. And just for a selfish reason, I'm doing this for my kids because my oldest is in high school and it's going to benefit her greatly. And as well as for myself, because I'm now in midlife and I am reinventing myself or trying to anyways, because I feel like a lot of women think, "Oh, is this all there is?" But really that's like kind of when you know yourself and you can do a lot of things. You've already worked in your career, so hopefully you have, a little bit of some money to spend and um just investing in yourself and trying to become the best version of yourself. So that's what I'm up to.
Yay!
I would love for you guys to join me if you so like to do so.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely check out her channel. She has amazing content around gratitude. She even talks about when journaling isn't your thing, how to
Okay.
come up with other practices. Because, some of us love to journal, some people not so much. And, like as you talked about, gratitude's been such a key mindset shift.
Mhm.
And so if you're not into journaling, how can you still access and like bring gratitude into your life? She has so many videos on it. Um, Amazing advice. And I love to take some of her advice. And you also have some great shorts,
Yeah.
of just gratitude and ways you practice it. So I love that piece as well.
Thank you. I'm so glad you enjoy that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. And again, Famina and I have been having these conversations for the past 2 to 3 years, and we really love to go deeper
Mhm.
than maybe some of the conversations that we have outside of this. And although both of us, now that we're talking more and more, I feel like it's been recent,
Mhm.
a- it's been kind of flowing out into some of our girlfriend relationships more. Whereas I feel like 2 to 3 years ago, we
Mhm.
weren't having these conversations as
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thanks for having me. And hopefully, like, if people are interested, we can actually do this as a live and have people come on and ask questions or just share their stories. I think that would be really interesting.
yeah, I'd love to explore that. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so we're having these conversations anyway. So we just thought we'd bring it onto the channel. And every time, I feel like every time we talk, we're like, oh my gosh, that was so good. Like,
Yeah.
these conversations, and it's so, it's real, and it's not, you know, what we feel like so and so has said that we should be doing. And we're really digging into how do we have, that enjoyment in life and
Hmm.
enjoy the things that we've worked so hard for. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And I look forward to having you on again.
Thanks for having me.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.